Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everything Iconic with me, Danny Pellegrino. I'm super excited. We have a writer, a star, Joel Kim Booster. He wrote Fire Island, which is on Hulu in June. It's June 3rd, right? That's the release date. Yeah. He's also in a Netflix special. Joel, how are you today?
I'm doing so good. And I have to say, I was telling you before, I've been doing so much press. And then to see that you are the final one today was it was such a relief. I'm just so excited. I'm such a huge fan. So this is really exciting for me.
And vice versa too. And I just have to gush over the movie, which I'm sure as you've been talking to people, it was so good. And it was heartwarming and beautiful and funny. And it was just all of the most wonderful of things. So I do want to talk a little bit about that first. Talk to me about the transition, because you initially developed it for Quibi, right?
Yeah.
So how did we go from like a Quibi thing? Because when we all think of the Quibi thing, we think, oh, that's going to be like kind of a crappier project, to this beautiful, stunning, amazing film that was so good.
Well, I got to say, say what you will about Quibi, but they did have pretty good taste. I mean, they were pouring money into some, it was me and Reese Witherspoon. So, sure. Like they had some good taste. And I'll say the other thing is that like the appeal of Quibi, I think for a lot of creators, was that you would get it all back in 2 years and could sell it however you wanted. And so when I wrote it for Quibi, I always wrote it structurally as though I were writing a screenplay, and then I just sort of chopped it into 10 chapters for Quibi. And so when Quibi folded, it was really easy for me to just go into Final Draft and like sort of take out the chapter breaks and just send it out as a screenplay. And structurally, there were things that I cut. I think like Quibi wanted a much broader comedy, and I do think the film is very funny, but there were things that they wanted me to sacrifice, I think, some of the heart for comedy in some places. And so that's really sort of the major change that happened with the switchover. But structurally, the story as it stands, it was largely the same from Quibi to Searchlight. We didn't make a ton of huge changes. I think there's maybe a song choice that someone sings in the movie that is a new addition for Searchlight that they, I think really allowed me to play a little bit more and be a little gayer. And so I'm deeply thankful for that.
Wait, can you tell me what the song choice was initially?
It was going to be Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, which is so morose compared to what it ends up being in the film. So
are you talking about the last song, right? The very last?
I'm talking about the karaoke moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I love the music choices. I mean, I really just thought it was so beautiful. And it's interesting. I was just watching that Heartstopper show. Have you seen that on Netflix?
I have seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't been able to sit down and watch it.
There's like this one scene where the kid, he's like a closeted kid, sort of coming to terms with his sexuality throughout this series. And he goes and searches on his phone, like LGBTQ movies. And I had sort of an aha moment or epiphany moment, because the same sort of 10 movies come up. But I'm a cheerleader. I mean, since the 90s, I think oftentimes people think we've come so far, and we have made a ton of strides. But if you Google LGBTQ movies, there's still a small handful from the 90s and the early 2000s. And it's not
certainly mainstream ones. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the like TLA Wolf Studio released like gay. I remember in high school when I worked at a video rental store, I was watching all those movies like Eating Out, Big Eden, Mambo Italiano,
Trick.
Adam and Steve, Trick, like all those movies were really, they walked so that Fire Island could run. Like they were such huge influences on me when I was growing up.
That's what I was just going to ask, like,
access
of those LGBTQ movies, like, did you have a favorite? Because I remember even was Broken Hearts Club. There was it was sort of a gay rom-com with Dean Cain of all people.
Yeah, it was mostly straight. Yeah.
All straight.
My favorite one from that era, I mean, is so sad. It's probably a tie between Latter Days. If you remember that, and Mambo Italiano is Gay My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but with Italian people, and it's so fun and good. And if people can find it, I don't know. That's the problem, is that like when you Google gay movies, like the big mainstream ones come up, but they're so hard to find these other ones, these like smaller indie ones that were, they had their problems, but they were all really, really special too. And I tip my hat to all those creators for getting them made when they did.
I mean, our sort of generation had to seek those out and try to find them wherever we could, because it was like the only gay stuff we could see. And And not only that, but one of the things that I think is so special about Fire Island is it doesn't desexualize the gay experience, because sometimes, especially with those mainstream things, we take out all of the sexuality to make it a little bit more palatable to a wider straight audience or something. Yeah. But I think we need to show them the sex stuff so that people can be more comfortable.
And shout out to our two intimacy coordinators on set, two dynamite Australian women, straight women, who I had to tell you, like, I was shocked every time I saw a sex scene in Fire Island, because they got the angles in a way a lot of television and movies do not understand the angles in which we have to have sex. And it's science fiction sometimes when I see gay sex depicted on screen.
Right. Tell people a little bit about what the movie is. It's based on Pride and Prejudice, right?
Yeah, it's basically what Amy Heckerling did with Emma and Clueless is sort of what I was trying to do with Pride and Prejudice and Fire Island. It's a loose modern retelling that hits a lot of the same beats, and it has a lot of the same characters. It is structured around this chosen family that is a stand-in for the Bennets, and they go to Fire Island. And it really is, I think the big adjustment that I made is Pride and Prejudice is really about the romance between that the sisters have with Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy, especially. And in my movie, those romances exist in their own ways, but I do think it is so much more about the relationship between Bowen and I and the friendship that we have. And it is sort of, as much as it's a rom-com, traditional rom-com, I do think it's almost a romance between these two friends too, who are, going to the island to have fun and possibly have sex and just lose themselves a little bit in a world away from straight people.
Talk to me about working with Margaret Cho. Obviously, I love Margaret Cho, and I saw you were tweeting about, she had said what a delight it was to work on this movie and how amazingly talented you are and all of that kind of stuff. But I mean, that must be incredible to hear, because Margaret Cho.
It is beyond. I mean, I can draw a straight line from All American Girl to Fire Island, because Margaret really did change my life. She changed my conception of what was possible and what I could do as an Asian American person in this industry. I mean, I was probably like 8 or 9 when an All American Girl came out. And I just remember sitting like inches away from the TV and feeling like for the first time I was seeing myself, and it wasn't Jackie Chan. Like it wasn't an action movie. It was just like a family, and it was people like me, and finding out that like Margaret made that. I mean, it blew my world wide open. And, for me to get to work with her on this movie and to cast her in this movie, I mean, that part was originally written for an older gay man. And, she came in sort of late in the game, and it just was such an amazing full circle moment to have her on set, because she's incredible. She's everything you want her to be.
It looked really fun. Like, I just was watching, I was like, oh, I want to hang out there with all of those people. It was just I auditioned for it too. So there was some alternative universe where that would have happened. But I'm glad everyone who was in the film was much better than I would have been. But talk to me about casting queer people, because there's sort of this argument all the time, right? When straight people play gay roles, whether or not that's okay, where do we stand on that? And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, so my thing is that on paper, I don't have a problem morally with straight people playing gay roles. I do think that the best person for the role should always get it. But I also happen to believe that about 99.9% of the time, a gay person is the best person to play a gay role, because there is an authenticity that is really easily recognizable to especially other gay people when watching gay people on roles. I think the only straight actor I know who pulls it off somewhat convincingly is Darren Criss, and he's retired from playing gay roles now. So there is only now gay men to play them roles. And the thing is in casting in this movie, we did audition straight guys. We did, but there's a shorthand that comes in casting queer people in queer roles, that it was just like asking straight guys to understand the nuances and the layers of what was going on in this movie was a really tall order. And every gay person that we brought in practically really understood it on a really visceral level. And it was just like very clear. I mean, it's illegal for us to ask who's gay and who's not, but like we could tell.
Yeah. And I mean, watching anything, I think it's especially apparent when you see people kissing on screen. I think, I don't know. At least that's how I feel. I mean, everyone has sort of a different opinion on it, but I just think it's obvious when you're watching a straight person play gay and they're trying to kiss, there's, I don't know, not always. I think there are people in the past who have done it well. This is sort of a bigger picture too, and this might be more too serious of a topic for us to chat about, but I'm curious where you stand, because there's this kind of Fire Island is so wonderful, joyous, happy, very funny, but there's this kind of idea lately that I've been seeing a lot pop up within the LGBTQ community of like, we've already told our traumatic stories, and now we want to see more joyous things. And I sort of find myself somewhere in the middle. I don't think we should ignore those traumatic stories. I think those are also still important to tell. And I worry that this idea of like not having LGBTQ dramas portrayed on screen might cause us to lose some of the history of the LGBTQ community.
I think it's a balance thing, right? I think it's just, I think it's been a little imbalanced for a long time. I think that especially for mainstream studio movies, produced and oftentimes written and directed by straight people, like I think straight creators oftentimes are way more interested in our trauma than they are in our joy. And so I totally agree with you. I think that there is a place and there is a need to continue to tell those stories. But I just think that like there needs to be a balance, like straight people get the full gamut, and it doesn't always feel like we do. And like I really just, for me, I wanted to tell a story where everyone really liked being gay, and that one, like no one in this movie is struggling with their homosexuality. Like they've all been out and they all like it, and no one is like wishing they could be straight in this movie. And that was really important for me to portray.
I just loved it. I'm a huge rom-com junkie too. So there's so many of those elements in there. And it's just, I really can't explain the joy I felt watching it. And I know I'm so excited for everyone to get to watch, because it was just a beautiful movie. Talk to me about Housewives. You mentioned Jersey Housewives. You want to talk about the Jersey reunion. Tell me your thoughts. Go for it.
What a mess. Teresa, I think that like, there's this interesting trend that I'm seeing in Bravo world right now, where people are sort of coming around to this idea that like maybe Melissa was the master manipulator that Teresa has been saying she is. I know the girls over at our favorite bitch sesh, are sort of on that train because of various reasons. But watching Teresa sort of twist herself into knots to justify not having Melissa in the wedding was really rough to watch. Like, I get it. And the thing is I understand where she's coming from, where it's like, okay, we're not close, but like, also Melissa's right. If Melissa got married and Teresa wasn't in the wedding, it would have been World War III. Yeah, it would have been. She never would have been forgiven for that. And it is the hypocrisy that is sort of insane about Teresa, where she expects all this loyalty but gives absolutely no loyalty to her brother. And it's really, really hard to watch that play out. And you can tell that it really does. Like, I'm less like, I don't know necessarily how hurt Melissa is by it. I think she identifies it and pinpoints it. I don't know how like viscerally hurt she is, but you can tell that it really does bother Joe. And like, that's sad to me, because I really do like him. I think he's in the pantheon of great house husbands. And I'm
very attracted to Joe Gorga. And I know that I shouldn't, he's very attractive. There's all this hidden stuff though, that's behind the scenes. Like even on just devil's advocate, I also think like what Melissa is really upset about, I think it's maybe 10% that she knows this is tearing up her brother and sister, her husband and his sister. But I also think like she's in her mind thinking, oh, I'm not going to be in the wedding special, I'm not going to be.
But I mean, I have to say, and this is really sad, Melissa has nothing else if she's not in conflict with Teresa.
Totally.
She has nothing else. And we've seen that play out over the last 2 seasons where they've been in relative peace with each other. She has no story if she's not in conflict with Melissa. And so this is kind of the best case scenario for her. Not getting in the wedding really is sort of like, it gives her beef to go into next season.
Oh, that's interesting.
It gives her a platform. So now she doesn't have to make up shit about her fucking marriage next season. She can just fight with Teresa, which is what we all want to see.
And I'm tired of all of us pretending that they don't hate each other. Like they just don't even, I think from the get-go, they haven't liked each other. And we went like a couple seasons or 2 or 3 seasons now where it's been like, oh yeah, we're friends. And it's like, you're not friends. Like you hate each other.
It's very clear. And what I'm interested to see the development of is it really seems like Dolores and Teresa, there's sort of a fracture there in that friendship. For her to not get invited to the engagement party because she quote unquote isn't in a couple and she is, like, it's,
you know what I heard? Wait,
really
you know what I
crazy.
heard just today, Joel? That apparently, and this could be wrong, people were DMing it to me though, but Dina, I guess, threw the engagement party, Dina Manzo, because Dina and Teresa are really close, and Dina and Dolores hate each other. And it's something to do with like the Caroline Dina relationship. But so I think that plays it. There's something there. And I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet.
Dina is always hanging around sort of the periphery of all of these little dramas in some shape or form, especially with Teresa. I think that relationship always is like a specter that haunts this show.
What do you want for the cast next season? Do you want the same cast back? Do you want to get rid of some people? What are we thinking?
I think, well, we certainly don't need Tracy back.
No,
what a big bag of fucking
big old flop. Yeah, big old flop.
Just brought nothing. And I think like it didn't even really help Marge at all to have an extra ally because she was so nothing. It actually probably deducted points from Marge's tally by the end. I think I really like this cast. I think that there is probably room for one more, maybe. The relationships and the alliances are starting to feel a little stale. Like it's a little bit like I was actually really excited when Jennifer and Marge sort of made up and started to finally become real friends. It looks like that sort of dissolved a little bit by this reunion. Jennifer is like clearly back in Teresa's pocket in a big way.
Yeah.
The only one that I think is maybe sort of on her way out, and it's sad because I do think her story was a little compelling this season, was Jackie. It's not necessarily bringing, I don't know what's next, what she has left to give, like
they're saying in terms she's of demoted
with the ladies.
I've been hearing that she's been demoted to just a friend. So like not a main cast member, but yeah, I loved her storyline this season, but yeah, I don't know you mentioned the Jen and Margaret of it all. And I also think what was so interesting in part one of the reunion was the Dolores and Jen thing that was coming. It was like, I don't know.
And Teresa's, and that's really going to be the first time in a long time that Teresa's going to be put in a corner of making a decision, because like she is all about loyalty and she's all about, friend loyalty. And it's like, who's she going to be loyal? And like Dolores, I think is the one that's going to make that call. And I actually think that Teresa's going to choose Jen.
I would love to see Dina come in there because that would screw up all those dynamics so much.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's so funny because Dina came back on such a bad season that like we didn't really get to see Dina in action. Right. But I think that like if that's maybe what I want to see is swap out Jackie and Dina and see how messy it actually gets.
Joel, you're a Salt Lake City fan, right?
Oh yeah, through it.
I believe I saw this on your Twitter. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a big Mary fan, correct?
Mary fan is maybe not how I would put it. I think that Mary is one of the most evil housewives to her core that the franchise as a whole has ever seen. And I think that she is maybe one of the only housewives that could and maybe has committed murder in her past. I think she's dangerous. I think that she is that in some senses keeping her on television is irresponsible. And yet I think she is one of the most important things in that show, and that she needs to be brought back season after season until we see her arrested on screen in a similar fashion as Jen Shah. I just don't see any way around it. In a season where a woman is literally arrested by the feds for defrauding old people, Mary still somehow is the bigger villain in that season and more interesting in that season. Like that's a feat. That's a huge feat.
I still don't know that we've all fully unpacked season 2 of Salt Lake City Housewives. Like I really think like we'll go back in a few years and be like, what the fuck was that? Like there was a lot of crazy shit happening and it's all there on screen. And I just don't know that it was really appreciated for how good it was and also how crazy and fucked up it was.
No, I mean, the things that happened in that van time after time, I mean, it deserves its own like documentary. Like get that van driver on the horn. Right. Like whoever gets that interview is like is the real winner.
Kevin the driver.
Ecosystem of Real Housewives news. Like it's just it seems huge. And my worry is I do not think that Jen Shah understands the gravity of her situation just based purely on her social media presence right now. Like, I really worry that she is not being counseled well, because she's gonna go to prison for a long time.
Well, I get confused how all these women are being counseled. And I have met people who have worked social media for some of these women. And it is shocking, especially when you bring in the larger, the crimes and the courts, and you bring in these outside forces that are very real, intense, serious issues that they're dealing with. And I wonder who's counseling Erica Jane's social media. Why isn't anyone stepping in? I
don't know, but man, she is really losing the image war, by all accounts.
Wait, so talk to me about Erica Jane. You watch Beverly Hills, right?
Yeah. Big fan of Beverly Hills. Very excited to see what happens this season. Really promising, I think, development for Crystal is Crystal v. Erica. I'm actually I hope that is actually a thing, because what I need to see more from Crystal Kung Minkoff is more, tell me you're that girl. I need, as much as we all fell in love with Sutton, and as much as the I was violated played out too long for, I think it was a miscalculation on Crystal's part, that beginning arc of the season, she was so strong and she had showed such promise. Like, the way she stared down Sutton on that boat while she was rolling her face and just kept saying no was so magnificent. And then it just didn't, it sort of fizzled out. I think she was trying to do the calculus in her head, trying to stay ahead of what the audience reaction would be. And it was only after the show aired that she realized she bet on the wrong horses.
Yeah. And you're totally right. Yeah. I think she leaned in a little too hard with that violation thing.
Yeah.
And that was her first season, right? Was it? Yeah, it was her first. So I think, she was finding her footing, but yeah, I think the star quality is all there. I think,
yeah, gorgeous.
We've only scratched the surface of how good Crystal could be as a housewife.
For sure. And I think probably, certainly it sucks that they keep throwing these Asian women on these casts. And when what we really need and what we really deserve, reboot the OC with an all Asian cast. Because you want to know where rich Asian women live? It's the fucking OC, right. And oh God, watching the saddest 2-part reunion.
The saddest, Joel.
I mean, nothing. Just absolute nothing.
Dr. Jen was fucking asleep the whole 2 parts.
Yeah,
she didn't say 2 words. And, I was watching the Jersey right after Orange County. The Jersey women were just so much more awake on camera. When you get on camera, you do have to kind of perk it up a little bit. Yep. And I was watching the Orange County women. I'm sort of Heather, she knows how to kind of perk up on camera.
Shannon has never looked better.
Shannon looked stunning at the reunion.
She looked amazing in that pink dress. Never looked better.
But when you look at Emily and everyone's just sort of sleepy. And I'm
even
wake
crazy.
up.
What's her?
Noella,
who I think was probably very necessary to that season. Even she really did not bring even any of her crazy from the rest of the season to the reunion. It felt very restrained in a big way. And that franchise needs serious help. And I don't think Tamara's the answer. I know a lot of people are clamoring for Tamara, and I get it. And I would prefer Tamara over nothing, but I really do think we need to let go of the franchise and move on, or reboot it completely or something.
I would love a recast. I think to me, that makes the most sense, but I don't know that they would do that, but it makes the most sense to let's start fresh with a new group of women.
Yeah.
That we can
go
cast
to San Francisco.
as friends.
Give us the Asian women of Silicon Valley. That is, I think the problem is we keep putting these Asian women on these casts of all, ex women. And it's putting a lot of pressure on them, I think, representationally. And I think that it's poor Tiffany Moon, she could have been somebody, but just saddled with a terrible cast.
Yeah. She was really, I felt bad for Tiffany, and that whole season was a mess. I'm glad they just sort of canceled it, but it is frustrating. And I know a lot of people are saying, we need a Married to Medicine Dallas, because Tiffany, I think, could be a great reality star, but it's man, she got the shaft. Joel, okay. Any other housewife thoughts you need to get out right now while we're here? Any other
I'm
Bravo?
Excited for Dubai.
Yeah.
I am really, excited to see the wider audience be introduced to Caroline Stanbury. I think that's going to be really exciting television. I'm not completely sold on the splitting of New York yet. I think that it needs to be, I think what would have been a smarter decision would be to just do Real Housewives of Brooklyn and then Real Housewives of Manhattan. Like I think like rather than try and do this like young versus old, like it doesn't make any sense. And I like certainly don't want to see the old ladies like sequestered on Peacock Island. I just want like just do two separate shows. Like the city is big enough. Brooklyn and Manhattan are two big enough boroughs. Like those women hardly ever leave the Upper East Side anyways, like Leah, the fact that it was like sort of a thing that Leah was a downtown girl was so shocking to me as someone who lived in New York for 5.5 years. Like it just like, that's where the vibrancy of New York is happening is like, downtown. So it was crazy to me that was ever a thing.
And splitting it that way, there could be such an opportunity for like a crossover episode or something where it's like oh,
if only Alex McCord still lived in Brooklyn.
I know. It's really upsetting. I think Andy was just saying in an interview I was reading, he's like, we all wish we could get Alex back, but she's in Australia.
Next, yeah.
Joel, talk to me. Fire Island, making something for the queer community. I find that I hope people don't yell at me for saying this, but I feel like oftentimes the LGBTQ community can be the most critical of LGBTQ creators. How are you feeling now that you have this amazing movie that is such a, I think, love letter to the queer community?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love being gay. And I hope that shows in the movie. I think that we are really hard on stuff that is meant for us. I think that in part is because of scarcity. I think that we just don't get enough of it. And so that when something finally does come along, it is forced to be it has to be everything for everyone. And our community is quite diverse, and I think that it's unfair to expect anything to be everything. And I get a lot of questions mainly from straight, outlets of like, how does this represent the universal gay experience? And it's like, it doesn't, and it's not supposed to. It represents a very specific experience shared by Bowen and I on that island. And it is about our friendship. And so much of it is cannibalized from our friendship. And if people happen to see themselves reflected in that, then I'm so overjoyed and I'm glad that they found that. But if you don't, my real hope is that, this creates a million clones. Like I'm so glad that Billy's movie is coming out this year too. Not only because like
Billy Eichner's Bros,
yeah, it's called in September. Because like, at least there's two now, like if they don't like my movie, hopefully they'll like Billy's. And if they don't like Billy's, then hopefully they'll make their own, and like, I don't say that flippantly. I mean that genuinely, is that like, I hope this inspires people and opens up the possibilities of what people think that they can accomplish in this industry is, that there's room for a breadth of experiences to be told on screen. And, I know I'm on gay Twitter. I know how mean we can be, and I understand, and I see the criticism, and the trailer dropping was a really scary day for me. But I if you had criticisms of the trailer, I will say about 90% of them that I saw online, I was like, oh, this is addressed in the movie. Like I think like when people are like, oh, we're supposed to believe that Joel Kim Booster is bullied on Fire Island, I was like, yeah, no, actually that I fully addressed that in the movie as the plot, it's a thing. So I think that like, I just hope that people give it a chance. And, I'll accept all of the funny, jokes on gay Twitter about it. I've done my share of that as well. I remember when Looking came out, so I accept it and I honor all of those responses, but I hope that people do give the movie a fair shot too.
Once they see it, people are going to love it. I mean, it's so good, but there's this weird thing that I almost think is ingrained in the gay community where, even outside of the industry, oftentimes there's one or two spots for a gay person in a leadership position or in any industry. When you look at the top, there are a handful of straight white men, and then there's, some women, and then it's like the one gay person or whatever. So it's almost like it's ingrained in people to want to tear each other down. And I hope going forward, we can all kind of lift each other up and know that there's tons of room at the top for everyone, and to tell all of these types of stories when it comes to the film industry.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really conscious thing that like Bone and I have been friends for almost a decade now. And like I remember we talked about this really, really early because like conventional wisdom says that Bone and I check a lot of the same demographic boxes, you know, and like there's a lot of ways that I think the industry would love to pit us against each other because of that and like say that there's only room for one of us. And I think like we made a really conscious decision to say like, fuck that. We're not going to play that game with each other and we're just going to support each other. And that's a huge reason why I wrote this movie is that, you know, I didn't see a world right now where Bowen and I got to co-lead a movie created by somebody else. So I said, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And like, I think that is like a huge issue and a huge part of why I was so excited to get this movie made is just prove that like it doesn't have to be like, oh, we climbed to the top of the ladder and then we pull the ladder up behind us and like block anybody else from making it, because that's not, you know, it's not how white guys do it. It is also frustrating that like a straight white guy makes a movie and people watch the trailer and say that's not for me, and then they sort of move on. But I think with gay entertainment, it's like, oh, that's not for me. And everyone's telling me that it is supposed to be for me. And that makes me mad, you know, and that makes me resent it even harder. And so I'm going to, you know, make it my mission to spend a week tweeting about it, you know, and dragging it for whatever reason. And so I just hope that this breeds, a million clones, and that there are too many gay movies for people to focus on any one, that kind of attention, you know?
I love that. Well, I know I have to let you go. I do want you to tell us about the special on Netflix. When is the special out?
Yeah, my Netflix special, my stand-up, my first full hour of stand-up on Netflix premieres on June 21st. It's called Psychosexual. And then I also I'm on an Apple show with Maya Rudolph that comes out on June 24th called Loot. That is very, very fun. And MJ Rodriguez also stars, and she's such a fucking star that I can't wait for people to see it.
I'm so excited. Well, I have to thank you. I mean, I love Fire Island, and I've always been such a huge fan of your work. So I'm just, I'm so grateful for you sharing it. And I ask all of my guests these next two questions: your favorite Mariah Carey song, and if you were choosing People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive, who would you choose?
So my favorite Mariah Carey song, it's kind of basic, but it's Always Be My Baby. I think classic. It never gets old. It's a classic for a reason. And my Time's Sexiest Man of the Year, I'm just gonna have to do a small plug for the movie, and it's Conrad Ricamora. Like, I think it is a huge indictment on this industry that Conrad Ricamora has not played a leading man in this capacity before my movie. I think he's so sexy. It was so easy to fall in love with him every day on set. And I cannot wait for people to get all kinds of boners for him watching him in this movie.
We love a boner here at Everything Iconic. Joel, I love you. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop by. Everyone check out Fire Island on Hulu and Joel's Netflix special as well. Look out for his new Apple Plus show. Joel, thank you so much.
Thank you.